Hello and welcome back to my channel, Boozy Bookish Thoughts. I'm Justine, or Jay if you prefer, and thank you for joining me again for another video. So this is coming up on Friday, and we will be talking about my biggest disappointments of 2022. So these are the books that, for one reason or other, just not only failed to impress me, but kind of actively disappointed me. Now, I have said this before, I am a very generous rater. So if you will look these up on my Goodreads and stuff, they're still going to only be rated 3 stars. But that's the lowest rating I gave any book last year. Short of a book being actively offensive, I'm not going to give it a very low rating. And I mean, it has to be very intentionally offensive, you know. Even books that I found objectionable content in, or that I felt needed trigger warnings, are still getting 3.5 or 3 stars from me. And I don't know if this is a failing of mine, but maybe it's because they're not all bad, it's just not for me, or I don't know. Maybe one of the I talked about last Tuesday, I talked about my reading goals and about challenging yourself with reading. Maybe this year I need to challenge myself to be a bit harsher in my ratings. Anyway, so just like in my I'm sorry, what's happening to me? Okay, ADHD moment. Okay, so I read 33 books last year, and I have 3 books here which I rated 3 stars, which is the lowest rating I gave last year. And those are, so that makes up about 10%, a little less than 10% of all the books I read. And so these are the of books, you know? And as with the best books video, I'm going to also throw in some honorable mentions. So these honorable mentions actually were a little bit better. They scored 3.5 stars. However, I personally, they still are prompted me to not, or at least for most of them, prompted me to decide to not pick up any more books by these authors, just because I was so disappointed, or just felt that they had a lot of promise and didn't fulfill it. So starting with the honorable mentions, I will start with Lucy Foley, just in general. That sounds so mean. But I read 2 of her books last year, and those were The Hunting Party and The Guest List. And I was unimpressed by both, suffice it to say. I don't know if I can say I was disappointed, but I was definitely unimpressed and underwhelmed by them. And considering that they were really hyped up to be really good mysteries, and she's such a great mystery writer, and they're all sort of locked room mysteries, but I just did not get the thrill. I didn't get that feeling of satisfaction when everything was over. I did not feel like all the threads tied together nicely enough, or in some cases were telegraphed way too soon. I was just generally unimpressed, and I don't think it's worth it for me to pick up another one of her books. To be fair, I think this might be a neurotype thing, because maybe a lot of her books depend on social tension and things like that, and maybe I was just missing it. I was getting secondhand embarrassment in some parts, and I was getting angry at some dudes for mistreating their partners in parts, but overall I felt a little underwhelmed. I didn't get that little mystery feeling from them. So that's all well and good. She still got 3.5 stars. It was probably pretty good writing. It just wasn't for me. The next is Sarah Penner's The Lost Apothecary. I don't know if I've had a chance to talk about this on my channel, but it is about a woman who is having marital problems, and then she goes on this adventure to learn about a lost apothecary. Then there's the secondary timeline about an apothecary that helps women poison abusive husbands and things like that. So it's like parallel stories and how they intertwine. And I was severely underwhelmed. Now, this is selling itself as like a feminist, historical, semi-magical realism type thing. And it was very light on the magical realism, very light and lukewarm on the feminism, and very underwhelming. The history was pretty rich, and the overall tone, like the exploring of the city, was nice, you know. But I just felt it didn't push the themes it wanted to push far enough. I felt like the characters' development was, I felt like the characters were a little undercooked. They could have been pushed further. I would have liked to see them go further in their journey. So maybe it's an issue of it ending too soon, but overall I felt like it didn't the emotional weight that it built up to just wasn't there. It didn't pay off, you know. And so it was a little gooey and runny towards the end, and in the middle it just wasn't anything that impressive. So I was really pretty disappointed in this. I was really hoping for it to be better. I don't know, I think this is a debut novel by Sarah Penner, but I probably will not be picking up anything by her anymore, unless maybe if something super intrigues me, but she will no longer be a priority author of mine. The next biggest disappointment is V.E. Schwab's Gallant. Now, this is the first something that all of these books have in common, all of the honorable mentions have in common, are that these are first books that I've tried by these authors, and all of them just failed to live up to the hype that I heard about the author, you know. And that was especially true for Gallant. I've heard such wonderful things about V.E. Schwab. I wanted to read her book so much. I own several of her books because they were so hyped up. I just happened to pick up Gallant first because it was the shortest, and I was so I felt like the world building was so lacking. It wanted to be so much more, but it didn't provide the layers that it needed to substantiate itself, you know. It left so many questions, so many I don't know if this is characteristic of V. Schwab's writing. I'm not gonna enjoy her other work, but like, they say that world building needs at least 2 layers of explanation, and I just felt like hers didn't even have 1 layer of explanation. And I'm like, it just it just felt very, of course Gallant is supposed to be a children's book, so when I say it's a little juvenile, you know, you can come back at me and say, well, it's a kid's book, and that's true, but I felt like this was a little bit too dark to be a full-on kids book, but also too young to be a real young adult book. So it's a bit, I think it suffered a little bit from identity crisis. Maybe for like a 13 or 14-year-old this would work, but at the same time, I don't know how. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not the target audience for this, but at the same time, you usually get like a better sense of how the writer is with their writing, and I was just not impressed. I was very disappointed, and unlike the other two, unlike Lucy Foley or Sarah Penner, I will be giving V.E. Schwab another chance. I will be picking her up at least 1 more of her books, but I will likely try and stick to one of her adult books, because I hear that her writing is very different between her the ones targeted for a younger audience and the ones targeting older audiences. So maybe that's the only problem. But I will be I will be giving her at least one more chance. Okay, moving on. We are still drinking milk tea, as you can see. So we now move on to the top three, the three biggest disappointments in my reading for 2022. These are in chronological order, meaning these are in the order in which I read them. So the first is, I need to read this because pronunciation is hard. Andrzej Sapkowski. The Sword of Destiny. So this is the second in the short story sort of prequel books to The Witcher series. And I read the first one, which was... I can't remember. See, that's how much I just didn't enjoy it. I read the first collection of short stories and I was severely underimpressed. But then some friends of mine were like, no, it gets better. And if you want, and like the first season of The Witcher covers both books, like the first and the second set of short stories. So if you want to like have read it before watching the series, then you need to read both. And I was like, okay, fine. And so I plodded through this one, and I can officially say I don't even want to watch the series anymore. Geralt is just not a compelling lead character. He is incredibly flat. I don't know if it's the way it's written, but he is just not an interesting main character. He supposedly has like inner conflicts, but he doesn't. It's never really explored or made explicit. And he's the tension between him and his main love interest is just, it feels a little juvenile to be honest. And overall, it was just a very meh book. I was really wanting to like this. This is why this is one of those true big disappointments, because I really wanted to like this. I've been looking for another new series which I can fall in love with, another new fantasy series I can fall in love with, and I was hoping it was gonna be this, because you know your girl loves lone anti-heroes, but unfortunately no. The next is going to be no surprise to anyone who has watched my channel previously, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I did not like this book. It was so pretentious. Lizzie's so pretentious, Darcy's so pretentious. All the characters are unlikable or incredibly bland and golden retriever-y. So yeah, nothing good to say about this. I said I wasn't gonna rant about it anymore, so suffice it to say, Pride and Prejudice is not it for me. Oh, and so with Andrzej Sapkowski, I will no longer be continuing the Witcher series, and with Jane Austen, I am unlikely to pick up any more Jane Austen, because at this point I have read 2 books by her, and both of them were not just underwhelming, but outright unlikable for me. So I don't want to waste any more of my time reading an author I don't like. The last is Rachel Hawkins' Reckless Girls. Now, I've ranted about this as well on my channel, so I will keep this short. I just found all the characters unlikable. I found the plot to be rather unbelievable at the same time as being predictable. And I just found it just not a good thriller, not fun. I didn't have that sense of satisfaction that came with the ending. And yeah, with this author, with Rachel Hawkins, I might give her a second chance, depending on whether or not another one of her books sparks an interest in me. If one of her other books sparks an interest in me, I might give her a second chance, but I'm not going to be that optimistic. So that's it. Those are my biggest disappointments of 2022. hopefully this year, as much as you hope to not have any disappointing books, that's always the risk. You can never say for sure that you're going to love a book or hate a book when you're starting out, and even your favorite authors can disappoint you. But I always think that that's the biggest risk when it comes to trying out new authors. But I think it's just about knowing when to call it quits with an author. It's just like dating, you go out, you go on a couple dates, you try it out, but then that doesn't mean you're gonna give them the third date. You gave them a brunch date, and then you tried again on a dinner date, and they're like, no, I'm not gonna meet you for drinks anymore this Friday, thanks very much. So yeah, those are the authors I am not having a third date with, or the ones who are on thin ice for their second date. Let me know down in the comments what your biggest disappointments of 2022 were, and at what point do you call it quits with an author that you tried but are not enjoying. So in the meantime, cheers with boba.